two, one, two, three.
Hello and welcome to Ithaca DSA Presents. I'm Theresa Alt. I'm here today with Ian Greer. He's director of Cornell's ILR Collab at Ithaca, a research outfit. He will tell us about unemployment insurance and what's new in New York State, because apparently some things are new, some others aren't. Ian, a few months ago, I interviewed you and you told us a lot about what was wrong in New York State unemployment insurance. And perhaps you could briefly go over that.
Unemployment insurance in this country is broken in many, many ways. And New York State is no exception. It's kind of an average state in terms of how it supports unemployed people. That means that most unemployed people actually don't get benefits. That means that the share of their income from work that is replaced by benefits when they become unemployed is well under half. It also means that many people who are eligible to get benefits don't get them because the system doesn't work very well. It's inefficient, it's under-resourced, there are staff shortages. Um, in addition, in New York State, we had a special situation where the maximum benefit level had been frozen since 2019 at 504 a month. Um, so that would be about how much you would get if you were making $25 an hour. If you were making more than that, you had a freeze in your benefits. Reason for that is that the system was insolvent. It was not collecting enough taxes from employers, and increases in benefits would have led to additional federal taxes. The state therefore froze benefit levels. Freezing benefit levels was a big deal for claimants, obviously, because it means you have less money. The value of benefits diminishes over time, but it also has other problems. For example, the unemployment insurance system is supposed to stabilize the economy during a downturn by making unemployed workers able to spend more in local businesses. And so if the value of benefits is low, it also can't serve that function in stabilizing the capitalist economy. So for a long time, the system has been plagued by all kinds of problems, and the one that has been addressed in the current budget is the issue of benefit levels.
Benefit levels, so what are they now?
So the maximum benefit is being moved up to $869 a week. So below that, the benefits are supposed to replace about half of your income. And then there is a minimum benefit of 136 a week. Um, so those are the three things that you can do to increase the generosity of benefits. You can increase the maximum benefit, which is what they've done. You can increase the minimum benefit, which was not part of the reform, and you can increase the replacement rate. Minimum benefit and replacement rate help lower earners. And so this is another area where we could potentially see improvement in future years in New York State if we organize around it.
Is anybody organizing around it?
Yeah, so the main players that are shaping unemployment insurance on the worker side are unions, of course. Um, whether they organize is an interesting question. Typically, with unemployment insurance, this is a matter of political deal making, but part of the political strategy of unions is, of course, to mobilize their members to go to Albany to talk to elected people. So there is that. And then there is another kind of organizing that takes place, which is more lower wage workers who tend not to be union members. And these are organized by worker centers and um, also legal aid agencies, nonprofit agencies that support people who are having problems with their unemployment benefit. They're very involved as well in mobilizing to make improvements to unemployment insurance benefits.
Okay, sounds hopeful, but there were other problems left, I believe.
Yeah, so it's so the the employers so okay, the deal was that the state would bail out the employers. So typically in unemployment insurance in this country, um, the benefits are funded entirely by payroll taxes from employers. Um, Part of the problem in New York State was it was insolvent. That means it was not collecting enough money from employers. The result was that so much was being paid out to benefits that New York State had to go into debt. So New York State has been in debt to the federal government since the early months of the COVID pandemic. Um, it still owes about $6 billion. So normally employers would pay that money back. But because we have such a business-friendly state government, we, the taxpayer, are going to cover the cost of paying back that debt. And we are paying not just that 6 billion, we're also paying an additional 2 billion, which is going to keep the system solvent for a little bit longer than if you just covered the entire debt. So the reason why the reason why you need more of a bailout than just the amount that employers owe the federal government is that they didn't fix the financing. So they didn't do anything to make sure that employers would pay more tax into the system so it would be insolvent and they could avoid federal penalties. Um, so, um, so we get in exchange for this big bailout, a big increase in the value of the maximum benefit. Um, I mean, I say an increase. Actually, this was what the benefit would have increased to had it just been allowed to go up in line with state law, but it was frozen because of the trust fund debt. So the system remains insolvent. It doesn't collect enough money from employers, and so this is one area that we have to work on. The reason why we don't increase taxes is, of course, employers don't want to increase taxes, and they're very powerful in Albany. Um, so, one of the main proposals for restructuring this and fixing it is to make the taxation of employers less regressive. So at the moment, small employers, employers of low earners, pay an effective tax rate that is much lower than big business and employers of top earners. And this is because of a few reasons, which we can talk about in a few minutes if you want. But the key problem that goes unaddressed here is the lack of money going into the system. And if not enough money goes into the system, this will have a big problem for workers because as soon as the state spends down the money that has been saved up to pay benefits and it goes into a deficit again, which is going to happen when we have another recession, um, benefits are going to freeze again. It's a big problem, actually, and quite disappointing that the state did not fix the proximate cause of the problem of excessive unemployment insurance debt. And this is damaging to workers because it leads to a freeze in the benefit level. But yeah, I mean, there are numerous other problems we could talk about as well, like all the reasons why most unemployed workers don't actually get benefits, why it is so difficult to navigate the system even when you're completely eligible to get benefits, And so there are a lot of proposed bills and projects and initiatives underway to address all these other problems.
Well, I think you suggested that what had been fixed in the budget bill. Is that true?
Yes, exactly. So that was in the state budget. So the advocates who work on this with me, we didn't think that there would be any change this year. We thought that we would continue to see the benefit frozen at $504 for the foreseeable future. And then there were some revisions to the forecasts of how much tax money the state would take in. And this $8 billion dollars somehow appeared, and it was decided to use that $8 billion dollars to pay for this bailout, which would address a problem that workers and unions were trying to address, the benefit levels. And it was also a handout to employers who obviously don't want to spend $8 billion dollars paying down the debt, especially small employers, because it's so regressive. Small employers get hit pretty hard, harder than, say, big banks or tech firms. Their effective tax rate is higher. They really feel it when there are these federal penalties and increases in taxes. So that's super important in the state political process that small business people go to their elected representatives and tell them that there is a crushing tax burden that they don't know how to cover. And of course that has a way of preventing us from making progress, because anything that costs money obviously needs to be paid for in taxes. And if elected people are hearing that the tax burden is crushing to small business, that often prevents them from doing what needs to be done to fix the system.
Well, you've talked about small businesses. I'm most familiar with the problem of paying unemployment taxes for a small not-for-profit.
Yeah, so most not-for-profits, small and large, are taxed differently than businesses. They are just charged for when they use unemployment benefits because they have made people unemployed. Businesses have to pay a tax even if they don't lay anyone off. The tax, though, is lower than if they did lay people off. So this is called experience rating, and the idea is to create an incentive for employers not to lay people off. Of course, employers often don't have a choice whether or not they lay people off. A big organization like Cornell has all kinds of ways of redeploying people and avoiding laying people off. A small business has fewer ways of redeploying people and avoiding layoffs. So this experience rating system, these extra charges for employers that lay people off, this is another aspect of how regressive our system is, and another cause for small businesses to pay a higher effective tax rate than bigger businesses.
And I guess small not-for-profits perhaps having the worst of it.
Yeah, well, you have a small nonprofit and your funding from the state or federal government dries up,
Or a grant.
or your grants don't come through, and you don't have funds to pay for staff. You lay them off, and then you have to cover the cost of their unemployment benefits. So that's the principle of experience rating. Um, it's a little absurd to tell you, the small nonprofit, that you should have just not laid them off, because where were you going to get the money? I guess you should have been better at writing grants, right? So, the assumption is it's your fault, the employer, that your workers unemployed. And the politics of that are really toxic, not just for employers talking to their electeds about what should change in the system, but also in the everyday administration of the system. So there's a really strong incentive for you, the executive director of the nonprofit, to go to the state and say, no, this person shouldn't get unemployment benefits. They committed misconduct. We fired them because they did something wrong, and therefore it's their fault that they're unemployed. And as a result, they shouldn't get benefits, and you shouldn't charge me for them being unemployed. So there are a lot of frivolous objections from employers as a result of this because if they don't object, they get charged, right?
Oh boy. And
New York State is not unique in this. This is experience rating is has been mandated by legislation since the beginning of the UI system and the Social Security Act of 1935.
now let's see. There were some other problems that I think you say haven't changed. So I'm guessing a little bit. I think you actually mentioned, perhaps before the show, that one was people who work but don't qualify for unemployment.
Yes, so there are many reasons why unemployed people don't get benefits. One of them is that they qualify, but the system is so inefficient and difficult to navigate that they don't get their benefits. But another is that there are a lot of people who are just carved out of the unemployment system. These include a lot of the people who, for the first time ever, got benefits during the pandemic under the federal programs. So the big group then was self-employed people. They don't get unemployment benefits normally, but they did get the federal benefits. So their work dries up because pandemic, and the government wanted to put money in their pockets, so created a whole new program for them. So that's a big group, but there are lots of other groups as well. For example, education workers who are unemployed between the terms. So it's summer break or winter break. You're unemployed, and very, very few people who, in that situation are eligible for unemployment benefits in this state. However, that is not a federal requirement. There are people who we could be paying unemployment benefits to. Um, so you can't pay teachers or administrators during the break, but you could pass a state law to pay bus drivers and crossing guards and people in dining halls and people who clean the buildings. So this is something that unions are working on right now in New York State to include more education workers. This would also help adjunct faculty. So this is a big problem. Education workers are carved out, and I mean, there are a lot of seasonal kinds of work where you do get unemployment benefits. In this state, construction is the big one. So construction unions use it a lot. Yeah, education in Ithaca is a huge business, and so I think this will make a big difference for a lot of people in Ithaca. So there's the education workers piece. There are also people who are ineligible because they are undocumented workers. So we had a program for them during the pandemic called the Excluded Workers Fund. And there's a proposal to bring that back, called the Unemployment Bridge Program. And the reason why undocumented people can't get benefits is federal law. And also the doctrine that they're not available to work because they're not supposed to work under law, and you have to be available to work in order to get unemployment benefits. If you're not available to work, you're not really a job seeker. Um, so a new benefit is being proposed that would cover undocumented people, and that same proposal versions of it have included certain self-employed people under a certain income threshold. It also would have included formerly incarcerated people. So formerly incarcerated people normally are looking for work right when they come out, but it's very rare that they actually get any benefits because they don't have the earnings history. So their work that they did in prison doesn't count for their for unemployment insurance. And this is a big problem for them because it is really they really struggle in the labor market. They need support. It's hard for them to get a job. They're unemployed longer than other job seekers. So providing formerly incarcerated people with benefits was another politically really important part of the unemployment bridge program. So, I mean, we've just got a lot of these in this country, people who have been carved out for this or that reason. I mean, another reason unemployed people aren't eligible is that they've been unemployed too long. So our benefits last in this state 26 weeks. There's some states where it's much less when there's low unemployment. In some states, it is as little as 12 weeks. And of course, unemployment spells on average are they can be quite long. And over the decades, they're getting longer and longer. So there are a lot of people who just time out of their benefits and then they're still unemployed and they're not getting benefits because they're not eligible anymore.
Okay, and you also, I think, mentioned classification or
Yes, so this is a gray area and therefore very interesting to my attorney friends who work on this. But it is a big problem, right? Because we have a lot of um, workers who are like employees, but their employers say they are not employees, like Uber drivers, for example. This is kind of a long-standing debate on how whether Uber drivers and Lyft drivers and other kinds of so-called gig workers should be classified as employees. Well, when their work dries up and they don't have any rides, which happened during the pandemic on a large scale, for example. They are they they need to get benefits, um, and arguably they are employees. According to New York State law, Uber drivers and Lyft drivers are considered employees. And so they're supposed to be, the companies are supposed to be paying into the system and the workers are supposed to be getting benefits. The problem is that these companies have been preventing the system from functioning by not reporting their workers' wages and dragging their feet in various ways. Uh, and so even when the state says, okay, if you're an Uber driver, you're eligible, it doesn't mean you can get your benefits because you have to demonstrate that you have an earnings history, and that data normally comes from your employer. The employer doesn't provide that information, then um, maybe you keep records, but there are a lot of people who can't get benefits because they can't prove that they had earnings. So a group that I'm part of has been trying to tighten up the rules around that and make sure that employers are reporting wages and that New York State Department of Labor presumes that their workers are employees, just to make the procedures more efficient and get them their money more quickly. But yeah, these gig companies have really done a lot to undermine unemployment insurance in this country. New York State is one of the very few where actually they are supposed to be getting paid unemployment insurance. But the reality is that it's very hard. There was a lawsuit against New York State government in which a judge basically forced New York State to pay um, Uber drivers unemployment insurance benefits. Still, it's been a real slog for the Taxi Workers Alliance in New York City, which has been in the center of that fight, as well as nonprofit attorneys that support the workers who are having problems with their unemployment benefits.
well, one other thing that I recall from the past interview was the state suffering from uh, a ludicrously outmoded computer system. Has that changed?
New York State is in the middle of modernizing its unemployment insurance systems. It has been in the middle of this modernization process as long as I have been involved in this area of policymaking, 3 years and counting. Um, so it is unclear when the new, improved, efficient system will be rolled out. I sat in on a demonstration of it, and it was really remarkable. It was so it's they're using a contractor called Tata Consultancy Services, TCS. The interface that I saw was developed for the state of Mississippi in 2006, and it really does look like a website that was created in 2006. It does not look very slick. It does not look good. It really reflects the lack of resources that go into making sure that eligible workers are getting their benefits. Another recent development with unemployment insurance uh, in this state was that there was federal money to pay for states to modernize their systems. This was agreed during the Biden administration, and the focus was making it more efficient, and equitable and inclusive, but it was also to clamp down on fraud and improve program integrity. Um, and so an identity verification was a big issue. There was a lot of rhetoric coming from the Republicans about fraud and waste, and New York State was considered one of the worst places for fraud and waste. Um, so what has happened recently is that the federal government has decided not to release the outstanding money that could have been used for modernizing the system and making it more efficient, which would have also led to all kinds of ways of fraud prevention. So it allows the Republicans to say, well, look, there's all this waste and fraud, and to deprive states of the resources to fight waste and fraud.
The same old Washington story. Well, thank you, Ian Greer. It's interesting to hear what's going on in unemployment.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Anytime, Teresa. Hopefully, next time we will have made some progress on making benefits available to people who either aren't eligible or aren't getting them because the system isn't working the way it should.
This has been Ithaca DSA Presents. I've been talking with Ian Greer of the CoLab at Cornell ILR in Ithaca. I'm Theresa Alt. Thanks for watching.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.